Marcus Chen had always believed that success was a formula. Revenue minus expenses equals profit. Market analysis plus strategic planning equals growth. But on that humid Thursday morning in August, standing in his corner office overlooking downtown Seattle, he realized that all his calculations had led him to the edge of financial ruin. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The numbers on his computer screen told a story he didn't want to believe. Chen Digital Solutions, the tech consulting firm he had built from nothing into a $50 million empire, was hemorrhaging money faster than he could inject capital. 3 major clients had terminated their contracts in the past month. His top developers were jumping ship to competitors. The company credit line was maxed out, and payroll was due in 6 days. Marcus pressed his palms against the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the morning rush-hour traffic crawl through the streets below. Just 18 months ago, those same streets had felt like his kingdom. His company occupied 4 floors of the prestigious Columbia Center. His personal portfolio was worth 8 figures. Forbes had featured him on their 40 under 40 inches list, calling him the visionary who was revolutionizing how Fortune 500 companies approached digital transformation. Now, at 36, he was facing the possibility of losing everything he had worked 14 years to build. The irony wasn't lost on him that his downfall had begun with his greatest triumph. 18 months earlier, Chen Digital Solutions had landed the largest contract in the company's history, a 3-year, $20 million deal with Meridian Industries to overhaul their entire technological infrastructure. Marcus had celebrated by purchasing a waterfront mansion in Medina, upgrading his company headquarters, and expanding his team by 60%. What he hadn't anticipated was that Meridian Industries was already in financial trouble when they signed the contract. When they declared bankruptcy 8 months later, they took Chen Digital Solutions down with them. The domino effect was swift and merciless. Other clients, spooked by the association with a failed corporation, began questioning Marcus's judgment. Competitors spread rumors about his company's stability. The tech industry, notorious for its short memory of success and long memory of failure, turned its back on the golden boy who had seemingly lost his touch. Marcus walked away from the window and slumped into his ergonomic desk chair, a piece of furniture that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. His assistant had already canceled his morning meetings. There was no point in discussing future projects when the future itself was uncertain. He opened his laptop and began reviewing the termination letters that had arrived overnight via email, each one a variation of the same theme. Due to recent market uncertainties and strategic realignments, we have decided to discontinue our partnership with Chen Digital Solutions. The worst part wasn't the financial catastrophe, though that was devastating enough. The worst part was watching his team. People he had recruited personally, people who had trusted him with their careers, receive pink slips, while he sat powerless in his executive suite. Yesterday, he had laid off 37 employees, including Sarah Martinez, a brilliant systems architect who had turned down offers from Google and Microsoft to stay with his company. The look of betrayal in her eyes, as he explained that he could no longer afford to keep her on staff, haunted him more than any financial statement ever could. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his ex-wife Elena. "Saw the news about the layoffs. I'm sorry, Marcus. I know how much the company means to you." Even Elena, who had left him 2 years ago citing his obsession with work and inability to maintain relationships, felt compelled to offer sympathy. The fact that his business failures had become public knowledge made the humiliation complete. He closed his laptop and decided to leave the office early. There was something deeply depressing about sitting in a nearly empty building, surrounded by the remnants of his former empire. The cubicles that had once buzzed with activity now sat vacant, their monitors dark and their chairs pushed neatly under desks that would likely be repossessed within the month. As Marcus waited for the elevator, he passed the break room where Rosa Morales was quietly wiping down the counters. Rosa had been the building's custodial supervisor for the past 3 years, arriving every weekday at 7 in the morning and leaving at 4 in the afternoon. She was a small woman in her early 50s with graying hair, always pulled back in a neat bun and hands that moved with the efficiency of someone who took pride in her work. Marcus had interacted with Rosa perhaps a dozen times in 3 years, and those interactions had been limited to polite nods and the occasional good morning when their paths crossed. She was part of the invisible infrastructure that kept his world functioning. The cleaning crew, the security guards, the maintenance staff, who ensured that his company could focus on the important business of making money and solving complex technological problems. "Good afternoon, Mr. Chen," Rosa said, looking up from her cleaning supplies as he passed. "Afternoon, Rosa," Marcus replied automatically, not breaking his stride. He was already mentally composing the email he would need to send to his remaining clients, trying to reassure them that Chen Digital Solutions was still a viable partner, despite the recent setbacks. The elevator arrived with its familiar ding, and Marcus stepped inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. As the doors began to close, he caught a glimpse of Rosa returning to her work, methodically cleaning surfaces that fewer and fewer people would touch as his company continued to shrink. During the drive to his Medina mansion, Marcus tried to calculate how long he could sustain his current lifestyle if the company folded completely. The house alone cost him $30,000 a month in mortgage payments. His car collection, a Lamborghini, a Tesla, and a vintage Porsche, represented nearly $500,000 in depreciating assets. The country club memberships, the personal trainer, the chef who came to prepare meals 3 times a week, all the trappings of success that had seemed so important when money was flowing freely now felt like anchors dragging him toward financial ruin. Marcus pulled into his circular driveway and sat in his car for several minutes, staring at the imposing facade of his 6,000-square-foot home. The house had been featured in Architectural Digest the previous year, a modern masterpiece with clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of Lake Washington that took visitors' breath away. Elena had called it a museum rather than a home, and Marcus was beginning to understand what she meant. The house was beautiful, impressive, and utterly cold, a reflection of the man who had purchased it as a symbol of his success rather than a place where he might find happiness. Inside, the silence was oppressive. Marcus's footsteps echoed on the polished concrete floors as he made his way to his home office, a space that rivaled his corporate headquarters in terms of technological sophistication. Multiple monitors displayed real-time market data, cryptocurrency prices, and news feeds from around the world. The desk, made from a single piece of Brazilian rosewood, had cost more than many people's annual salary. Marcus poured himself 3 fingers of 25-year-old Macallan Scotch and settled into his leather chair to review his personal financial situation. The numbers were sobering. His liquid assets could sustain his current lifestyle for perhaps 6 months if he made no changes. The house could be sold, but the current market was soft, and he would likely take a significant loss. His stock portfolio, heavily weighted toward tech companies, had declined by 40% over the past year. For the first time since starting his company, Marcus Chen felt the cold grip of genuine fear. He had always been able to solve problems through analysis, planning, and sheer force of will. But this problem seemed different, more complex than any algorithm he had ever written or business challenge he had ever faced. The scotch burned pleasantly as it went down, and Marcus allowed himself a moment of self-pity. He thought about his father, who had immigrated to the United States from Taiwan with nothing but ambition and a mechanical engineering degree. His father had worked 16-hour days at Boeing, slowly climbing the corporate ladder while supporting a wife and 2 children. When Marcus had started Chen Digital Solutions at 22, his father had been skeptical about the risks of entrepreneurship, preferring the security of traditional employment. "Business is like gambling, son," his father had said. "Sometimes you win big, but the house always has an advantage." Marcus had dismissed this advice as the caution of an older generation that didn't understand the new economy. Now, sitting in his expensive house wearing a suit that cost more than his father's monthly salary, he wondered if the old man had been right all along. The sound of the front door opening interrupted his brooding. Marcus checked his watch and realized it was Thursday, which meant Carmen would be arriving for her weekly cleaning session. Carmen Valdez had been maintaining his house for nearly 2 years, recommended by his neighbor who praised her attention to detail and reliability. Like Rosa at the office, Carmen existed on the periphery of Marcus's awareness, a competent professional who ensured his living space remained spotless without requiring much interaction or attention. Marcus heard the familiar sounds of Carmen beginning her routine, the vacuum cleaner starting up in the living room, the soft clink of cleaning supplies being arranged, the gentle efficiency of someone who knew exactly how to move through a space without disturbing its owner. Normally, Marcus would retreat to his bedroom or home office when Carmen was working, giving her space to do her job while he focused on his own responsibilities. Today, however, He found himself oddly comforted by the sounds of another person in the house. Carmen Valdez had emigrated from El Salvador 15 years earlier, following her husband who had found work in the construction industry. She spoke English with a slight accent that became more pronounced when she was tired or stressed, but her communication skills were excellent, and she had built a successful house-cleaning business serving the affluent neighborhoods around Lake Washington. Marcus had learned these basic facts about Carmen's background during their initial consultation, but he had never delved deeper into her story. She arrived punctually every Thursday at 2 in the afternoon, worked for 4 hours with remarkable efficiency, and left behind a home that sparkled with cleanliness. The arrangement was professional, cordial, and entirely transactional. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself unable to concentrate on his financial calculations. The sounds of Carmen working, the methodical progression from room to room, the attention to details that he never even noticed, provided a strange counterpoint to his own mental chaos. While he struggled with spreadsheets and tried to find solutions to problems that seemed increasingly unsolvable, Carmen was creating order and beauty in his physical environment. Around 5 o'clock, Marcus emerged from his office to get another drink and nearly collided with Carmen as she was finishing the kitchen. She was standing at his granite island, carefully arranging the items that had been scattered across its surface: mail, keys, business cards from networking events he could barely remember attending. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen," Carmen said, stepping aside. "I'm almost finished here." Marcus noticed that she had grouped his mail by type and importance, with bills in one stack, personal correspondence in another, and junk mail in a third pile that was clearly destined for disposal. Without being asked, she had created a system that made sense, transforming chaos into order through simple, logical organization. "No need to apologize," Marcus said, opening the refrigerator to retrieve a bottle of water. "How long have you been doing this work, Carmen?" The question seemed to surprise her slightly. In nearly 2 years of service, Marcus had rarely engaged in conversation beyond polite greetings and instructions about specific cleaning tasks. 15 years in the United States," Carmen replied, continuing to arrange items on the counter. "But I've been cleaning houses since I was a girl in El Salvador. My mother taught me that taking care of a home is taking care of the people who live there." Marcus opened his water bottle and leaned against the counter, studying Carmen as she worked. She moved with purpose and confidence, treating his expensive possessions with care while maintaining an attitude of quiet professionalism. Her uniform was simple but clean, and she wore no jewelry except for a small gold cross on a chain around her neck and a wedding ring that had clearly seen many years of wear. "Do you enjoy the work?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious for the first time about the person who had been maintaining his home for so long. Carmen paused in her organizing, considering the question carefully. "I enjoy making things better," she said finally. "When I arrive, a house is messy, dirty, disorganized. When I leave, everything is clean and in its proper place. There's satisfaction in that transformation." Marcus nodded, understanding the appeal of such clear, measurable progress. In his business, success was often abstract: improved efficiency, enhanced user experience, optimized workflows. But Carmen's work produced tangible, immediate results that could be seen and appreciated. "It must be satisfying to solve problems so definitively," Marcus said. "In my line of work, you fix one issue and 3 new ones appear." Carmen smiled, and Marcus realized it was the first genuine smile he had seen from her in 2 years of professional interaction. "Every job has its challenges, Mr. Chen. But I've learned that most problems aren't as complicated as they seem. People make them complicated because they're looking at them from the wrong angle." Something in her tone caught Marcus's attention. This wasn't the polite small talk he had expected from their conversation. Carmen was speaking with the confidence of someone who had observed life from multiple perspectives and drawn meaningful conclusions from those observations. "What do you mean by that?" Marcus asked, setting down his water bottle and giving Carmen his full attention for the first time. Carmen hesitated, and Marcus could see her weighing whether to continue the conversation or retreat to the safer ground of professional distance. After a moment, she seemed to make a decision. "I clean houses in this neighborhood for many successful people," she said, gesturing toward the windows that overlooked the expensive homes surrounding Marcus's property. "Doctors, lawyers, business owners, all very smart, very accomplished. But I've noticed something interesting over the years. Marcus waited for her to continue, intrigued despite himself. The ones who are happiest, who seem most at peace, they're not necessarily the ones with the most money or the biggest houses, Carmen continued. They're the ones who remember that business is about people, not just numbers. They treat their employees like family. They know their customers' names and stories. They understand that success means building something that helps others, not just something that makes money. Marcus felt an unexpected jolt of recognition. Carmen's observation echoed thoughts that had been nagging at him for months, doubts he had pushed aside in his relentless pursuit of growth and profitability. "And the unhappy ones?" Marcus asked. Carmen's expression grew thoughtful. "They forget that behind every number on a spreadsheet is a human being with hopes and fears and families to support. They make decisions based on what looks good on paper instead of what's right for people. Eventually, the people stop trusting them, and when people stop trusting you..." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. She shrugged, leaving the conclusion unspoken. Marcus stared at Carmen, feeling as if she had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. Her words weren't accusatory or judgmental, but they landed with the force of absolute truth. He thought about the clients who had terminated their contracts, the employees he had laid off, the competitors who were spreading rumors about his company's instability. How many of those problems could be traced back to decisions he had made based solely on financial considerations rather than human impact? The funny thing is, Carmen continued, warming to her subject, the businesses that focus on taking care of people usually end up making more money in the long run, not because they're trying to, but because when people feel valued and respected, they work harder, they stay longer, they tell their friends good things about the company. Marcus thought about Sarah Martinez, the systems architect he had recruited from Microsoft by promising her creative freedom and the opportunity to work on cutting-edge projects. For 3 years, Sarah had been one of his most productive employees, often working late into the night, not because she was required to, but because she was genuinely excited about the work she was doing. When he had been forced to let her go, Sarah's disappointment had been about more than just losing a job. It had been about losing faith in a leader she had trusted. "I should let you finish your work," Marcus said, suddenly feeling self-conscious about monopolizing Carmen's time with his existential crisis. "I'm finished, Mr. Chen," Carmen replied, beginning to pack her cleaning supplies. "Everything is ready for your evening." As Carmen prepared to leave, Marcus found himself reluctant to end the conversation. Her perspective on business and success had illuminated aspects of his situation that he hadn't considered, viewing his problems through a lens of human relationships rather than financial metrics. "Carmen," he said as she moved toward the front door, "what would you do if you were in my position? If your business was failing and you didn't know how to fix it?" Carmen stopped and turned to face him, studying his expression with the same careful attention she had given to arranging his mail. Marcus realized that this was the first time he had ever asked for advice from someone he considered outside his professional sphere, and the vulnerability of the moment surprised him. "I would start by remembering why I started the business in the first place," Carmen said. "Not the money or the success, but the original reason. What problem were you trying to solve? Who were you trying to help? Sometimes when we're lost, we need to go back to the beginning to find our way forward." After Carmen left, Marcus remained standing in his pristine kitchen, surrounded by the immaculate order she had created. Her words echoed in his mind as he tried to remember the passion that had driven him to start Chen Digital Solutions 14 years earlier. Back then, he hadn't been motivated by Forbes lists or luxury cars or impressive office buildings. He had been motivated by the belief that technology could make businesses more efficient, more successful, more capable of serving their customers and supporting their employees. Marcus walked to his home office and opened the filing cabinet, where he kept mementos from the early days of his company. Buried beneath contracts and financial documents, he found a folder labeled Original Business Plan. Inside was a handwritten document from 2010, outlining his vision for a technology consulting firm that would help small and medium-sized businesses leverage digital tools to compete with larger corporations. The language in the document was idealistic, filled with phrases like democratizing technology and empowering entrepreneurs. Marcus had written about wanting to be the bridge between complex technical solutions and practical business applications, helping companies use technology to better serve their customers rather than simply increasing their profit margins. As he read through his original mission statement, Marcus realized how far he had strayed from those founding principles. Somewhere in the pursuit of growth and recognition, he had forgotten that his company's true value lay not in the sophistication of its technical solutions, but in its ability to understand and address the real challenges facing business owners who were trying to build something meaningful. That night, Marcus lay awake in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling as Carmen's words played on repeat in his mind. Business is about people, not just numbers. The statement seemed almost revolutionary in its simplicity, yet Marcus couldn't deny its truth. Every successful project his company had completed, every satisfied client, every talented employee who had contributed to the company's growth, all of it came down to human relationships built on trust, understanding, and mutual benefit. Marcus thought about the clients he had lost and tried to identify the moment when those relationships had begun to deteriorate. In every case, he realized, there had been a point where he had prioritized efficiency or profitability over the client's actual needs. He had pushed for solutions that looked impressive on paper, but didn't address the fundamental challenges the clients were facing. He had treated symptoms rather than causes, focusing on metrics that made his company look good rather than outcomes that made his clients' businesses better. The revelation was both humbling and oddly liberating. If Carmen was right, if the path to sustainable success lay in returning to a people-focused approach to business, then Marcus's current crisis might be an opportunity rather than just a catastrophe. Instead of trying to save Chen Digital Solutions by cutting costs and chasing quick wins, he could use this moment to rebuild the company on the foundation of genuine service and authentic relationships that had motivated him in the beginning. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Marcus's mood as he drove back to his nearly empty office building. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of purpose that extended beyond mere survival. He had work to do, not the desperate scrambling to save a failing business, but the thoughtful, patient work of rediscovering what had made his company valuable in the first place. Marcus arrived at the office earlier than usual, finding the building quiet except for the security guards and cleaning crew. He made his way to the fourth floor, where Chen Digital Solutions occupied significantly less space than it had just 6 months ago. The empty cubicles and darkened conference rooms that had depressed him yesterday now seemed less like symbols of failure and more like blank canvases waiting to be filled with renewed purpose. He settled into his office and began making a list of the clients his company had served over the past 14 years, trying to identify patterns in the relationships that had been most successful and fulfilling. The exercise was revealing. The clients who had remained loyal longest and generated the most referrals weren't necessarily the ones who had paid the highest fees or worked on the most technically complex projects. They were the ones with whom Marcus had taken the time to understand not just their technical requirements, but their broader business goals and the challenges they faced in serving their own customers. Marcus remembered Jennifer Walsh, who had hired Chen Digital Solutions to modernize the inventory management system for her family's restaurant supply business. The technical solution had been relatively straightforward, but Marcus had spent hours talking with Jennifer about her company's history, her relationships with restaurant owners throughout the Pacific Northwest, and her concerns about maintaining the personal touch that had made her father's business successful as it grew larger and more automated. The system Marcus's team had designed for Jennifer went beyond simple inventory management. It included features that helped her maintain personal relationships with customers, track the unique needs of different restaurants, and ensure that automation enhanced rather than replaced the human elements that made her business special. Jennifer's company had thrived with the new system, and she had referred 6 other clients to Chen Digital Solutions over the following years. Contrast that with Meridian Industries, the large corporation whose bankruptcy had triggered Marcus's current crisis. The Meridian contract had been lucrative and technically challenging, but Marcus realized he had never really understood what the company did or how his technological solutions fit into their broader business strategy. He had focused on deliverables and milestones rather than outcomes and impact. When Meridian's fundamental business problems had led to bankruptcy, the sophisticated technical infrastructure Chen Digital Solutions had built became irrelevant overnight. As Marcus continued his analysis, a pattern emerged that aligned perfectly with Carmen's observation about people-focused versus numbers-focused businesses. The clients who had valued and sustained long-term relationships with his company were those who viewed technology as a tool for better serving people, their customers, employees, and communities. The clients who had treated technology as an end in itself, a way to reduce costs or increase efficiency without considering human impact, had been more likely to experience problems that no technical solution could solve. Around 10 o'clock, Marcus's phone rang with a call from David Kim, one of the few remaining senior employees at Chen Digital Solutions. David had been with the company for 8 years, starting as a junior developer and working his way up to lead architect on some of their most important projects. "Marcus, I wanted to talk to you about something," David said without preamble. "I've been thinking about the layoffs, about what's happening to the company, and I have an idea." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. David was one of the most insightful people on his team, someone who understood both the technical and business sides of their work. "I'm listening," Marcus said. "What if we're approaching this wrong?" David continued. "What if instead of trying to compete with the big consulting firms on their terms, large contracts, complex implementations, high overhead, we went back to what we were good at in the early days? Helping smaller companies solve real problems with practical solutions?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, intrigued. David's suggestion echoed the thoughts that had been forming in his own mind since his conversation with Carmen. "Tell me more," Marcus said. "I've been talking to some of our former clients, the ones who stuck with us through multiple projects over the years," David explained. "They're not looking for flashy, expensive solutions. They want partners who understand their business and can help them use technology to better serve their customers. There's a whole market of companies that need exactly what we're good at providing, but we stopped paying attention to them when we started chasing bigger deals." Marcus felt excitement building in his chest, the first genuine enthusiasm he had experienced about his business in months. David was describing exactly the kind of work that had motivated Marcus to start the company in the first place. The opportunity to be a bridge between technological possibility and practical business need. "What would that look like?" Marcus asked. "How would we restructure to focus on that market?" "Smaller team, lower overhead, more personal relationships," David said. "Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, we become specialists in helping small to medium-sized businesses use technology effectively. We charge less per project, but we build long-term partnerships that generate steady revenue and referrals." As David outlined his vision, Marcus realized that this approach would require him to abandon many of the symbols of success he had spent years accumulating. The prestigious office space, the large staff, the pursuit of massive contracts, all of that would have to go. But instead of feeling like a step backward, the prospect felt liberating. He would be trading the trappings of success for the substance of meaningful work. "David," Marcus said, "what would you think about becoming a partner in a rebuilt version of this company? Not the current Chen Digital Solutions, but something smaller, more focused, more aligned with what we actually do best?" There was silence on the other end of the line, and Marcus could almost hear David processing the implications of the question. "Are you serious?" David finally asked. "I've never been more serious about anything in my professional life," Marcus replied. And he realized it was true. For the first time since his crisis had begun, he was thinking about building something, rather than just trying to save what was already broken. After ending the call with David, Marcus spent the rest of the morning outlining a vision for a completely restructured company. Instead of trying to plug the holes in a sinking ship, he would build a new vessel designed for the waters he actually wanted to navigate. The new company would be smaller, leaner, and more focused on developing deep relationships with clients who valued partnership over mere service provision. Marcus thought about Carmen's insight that the happiest business owners were those who remembered that success meant building something that helps others. He began to envision a company that measured success not just in revenue and profit margins, but in the tangible improvements it created for its clients' businesses and the positive impact those improvements had on their customers and communities. The financial realities of such a transformation would be challenging. Marcus would need to sell his mansion, downsize his lifestyle, and accept that his rebuilt company might never reach the same size or generate the same revenue as Chen Digital Solutions at its peak. But for the first time in months, those sacrifices felt like choices rather than defeats. He would be trading external validation for internal satisfaction, impressive metrics for meaningful work. As the day wore on, Marcus found himself energized in a way he hadn't experienced since the early days of building his company. He was no longer just trying to survive a crisis. He was planning a renaissance based on principles that aligned with his original vision and values. The woman who cleaned his house had shared a perspective that was reshaping his entire approach to business and life. Marcus remained in his office until well past sunset, sketching out plans for a company that would prioritize long-term relationships over short-term gains, sustainable growth over rapid expansion, and human impact over financial metrics. It was ambitious and risky, requiring him to essentially start over at an age when many entrepreneurs were looking to sell their businesses and retire. But as Marcus finally gathered his belongings to head home, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months: genuine excitement about going to work the next day. Carmen Valdez, without realizing it, had given him more than cleaning services and organizational skills. She had reminded him that the best businesses are built on the foundation of serving others, and that success measured in human terms is more sustainable and satisfying than success measured only in financial terms. The road ahead would be difficult, requiring him to rebuild not just his company but his entire approach to business and life. But for the first time since his crisis had begun, Marcus Chen felt like he was moving towards something meaningful rather than just running away from failure. And it had all started with a simple conversation about the difference between businesses that focus on people and businesses that focus only on numbers. Part 1 had ended, but Marcus suspected that the real story was just beginning. The following Monday marked the beginning of what Marcus would later call his professional rebirth, though at the time it felt more like controlled demolition. He arrived at the office at 6 in the morning, 2 hours before anyone else, carrying a box of donuts and a thermos of coffee that he had prepared himself rather than ordering from his usual expensive catering service. The first person he called was David Kim, asking him to arrive early for a private conversation about the future of their working relationship. When David walked into Marcus's office at 7:30, he found his boss sitting not behind the imposing rosewood desk, but in one of the casual chairs near the window, with legal documents spread across the coffee table. "I've been thinking about our conversation on Friday," Marcus began without preamble. "I want to offer you a 25% stake in a new company we're going to build together. Equal partnership in everything except final decision-making authority, which I'll retain as majority owner." David's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. In 8 years of working for Marcus, he had never seen his boss make such a dramatic gesture of trust and partnership. "What's the catch?" David asked, settling into the chair across from Marcus. "No catch, but there are conditions," Marcus replied. "We're going to dissolve Chen Digital Solutions and start completely fresh. New name, new mission, new approach to everything we do. We'll focus exclusively on small to medium-sized businesses that need genuine partnership rather than just technical services. Lower fees, longer relationships, deeper involvement in our clients' success." Marcus explained his vision for the new company, outlining how they would measure success not just in quarterly profits, but in the long-term impact they created for their clients. He described a business model based on sustainable growth rather than rapid expansion, prioritizing client satisfaction over impressive revenue numbers. "It means smaller profits initially, David. Maybe for several years. It means working more closely with clients, understanding their businesses at a deeper level, sometimes turning down projects that don't align with our values. Are you willing to take that risk with me?" David was quiet for several minutes, studying the partnership documents that Marcus had prepared. When he finally looked up, his expression was thoughtful but determined. "Marcus, I've watched this company change over the past few years, and I've seen how the pursuit of bigger and bigger contracts has made us lose sight of what we actually do well. If you're serious about getting back to the work that originally made this place special, then yes, I'm in." The handshake they exchanged felt like the foundation of something entirely new, a partnership built on shared values rather than just complementary skills. Over the following weeks, Marcus began the complex process of unwinding Chen Digital Solutions while simultaneously laying the groundwork for its successor. He met with bankruptcy attorneys, negotiated with creditors, and worked to ensure that his remaining employees received the severance packages they deserved, even though the company couldn't afford such generosity. The financial strain was enormous. Marcus explained how her words had inspired him to reconsider everything about his approach to business, leading to his decision to close Chen Digital Solutions and start fresh with a company built on different principles. He described the new partnership with David, the focus on serving smaller businesses, and the commitment to measuring success in terms of client impact rather than just financial metrics. You helped me remember why I started my company in the first place, Marcus concluded. I wanted to thank you for that wisdom. Carmen was quiet for a moment, absorbing what Marcus had shared. When she spoke, her voice carried a mixture of surprise and something that might have been pride. My mother always told me that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, she said. I could see that you were struggling with something, even though from the outside it looked like you had everything anyone could want. Sometimes the most successful people are the loneliest, because they think they have to solve all their problems alone. Marcus felt a recognition in Carmen's words that went beyond their previous conversation about business philosophy. She was describing not just his professional struggles but the personal isolation that had accompanied his pursuit of conventional success. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. How did you become so wise about business? You understand things about leadership and success that most MBA programs don't teach. Carmen smiled, the same genuine expression Marcus had noticed during their first real conversation. When you clean houses for 15 years, you see how people live when they think nobody is watching. You see the difference between people who are truly successful and people who are just wealthy. You learn to recognize the signs of happiness and the signs of stress, even in beautiful homes with expensive furniture. She continued, I've worked for business owners who treat their employees like family, and I've worked for others who treat their employees like expenses to be minimized. I've seen the difference it makes, not just for the employees, but for the success of the business itself. People work harder for leaders they trust and respect. Marcus realized that Carmen had been conducting an informal longitudinal study of leadership and success, observing patterns and drawing conclusions based on years of first-hand exposure to how different approaches to business affected both professional outcomes and personal well-being. Would you be willing to help me with something? Marcus asked, the idea forming as he spoke. I'm trying to build a company based on the principles you described. Putting people first, building genuine relationships, measuring success by the positive impact we create. Would you consider being an advisor? Not formally, but someone I could talk to about the decisions I'm facing as we grow? Carmen looked genuinely surprised. Mr. Chen, I don't have any formal business education. I'm not sure what kind of advisor I could be. You have something more valuable than formal education, Marcus replied. You have perspective, wisdom earned through observation and experience. You understand things about human nature and business relationships that I'm still learning. After Carmen agreed to serve as an informal advisor, Marcus felt a sense of completion in the circle that had begun with their conversation about people-focused business. The woman who had helped him recognize the flaws in his previous approach would now help him avoid repeating those mistakes as he built something new. The new company, which Marcus and David decided to call Compass Digital Partners, officially launched 6 months after the dissolution of Chen Digital Solutions. The name reflected their mission to help businesses navigate technological challenges while staying true to their core values and customer relationships. Their first office was a renovated warehouse space in Georgetown, far from the prestigious downtown towers where Chen Digital Solutions had been located. The space was open, collaborative, and unpretentious, a physical manifestation of the company's commitment to substance over style. Instead of individual offices for senior staff, everyone worked in the same open area, fostering communication and shared ownership of projects. Marcus and David hired carefully, prioritizing cultural fit and shared values over impressive credentials. Their first employee was Sarah Martinez, the systems architect Marcus had been forced to lay off during the Chen Digital Solutions collapse. Sarah had spent the intervening months doing freelance work, but she was intrigued by the opportunity to help build a company from the ground up, based on principles she believed in. I want to be part of something that remembers why technology exists, Sarah said during her interview. It's supposed to make people's lives better, to solve real problems. I got tired of building impressive systems that nobody actually needed or wanted. The early days of Compass Digital Partners were financially challenging but emotionally rewarding in ways that Marcus had forgotten were possible. The team was small enough that everyone was involved in every aspect of the business, from client acquisition to project delivery to strategic planning. There were no hierarchies based on seniority or ego, only a shared commitment to doing excellent work for clients who valued partnership over mere service provision. Their first major client was Jennifer Walsh, the restaurant supply business owner who had been one of Chen Digital Solutions' most loyal customers. Jennifer had been devastated when Marcus's previous company collapsed, not just because she lost a trusted vendor, but because she had genuinely cared about Marcus and his team as people. When Marcus approached Jennifer about working with Compass Digital Partners, her first question wasn't about pricing or technical capabilities. She wanted to know what had changed. What would prevent the new company from experiencing the same problems that had destroyed the old one? Marcus spent 2 hours explaining his transformation, the lessons he had learned about people-focused versus numbers-focused business, and the safeguards he had built into Compass Digital Partners to ensure sustainable growth rather than unsustainable expansion. Jennifer listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions about the company's values and decision-making processes. "I'll work with you again," Jennifer finally said, "but not because I need what you're selling. I'll work with you because I believe in what you're building. I want to support businesses that prioritize relationships and long-term thinking." The project with Jennifer became a template for how Compass Digital Partners approached client relationships. Instead of proposing a technical solution based on assumptions about her needs, Marcus and his team spent weeks understanding Jennifer's business from multiple perspectives. They interviewed her employees, observed her operations, and spoke with several of her restaurant customers about their experiences working with her company. The resulting technology solution was simpler and less expensive than what Marcus might have proposed during his Chen Digital Solutions days. But it was perfectly aligned with Jennifer's actual needs and business philosophy. More importantly, the implementation process strengthened, rather than disrupted, the relationships between Jennifer and her customers, using technology to enhance human connections rather than replace them. Word of Compass Digital Partners' approach spread through the small business community in Seattle and beyond. Marcus discovered that there was a significant market of business owners who had been underserved by traditional technology consultants, people who needed genuine partnership rather than just technical expertise, who valued long-term relationships over short-term cost savings. 6 months after launch, Compass Digital Partners had 12 full-time employees and a waiting list of potential clients. The company was profitable, but more importantly, it was fulfilling the mission Marcus had articulated in his original business plan 14 years earlier. They were democratizing technology, helping small and medium-sized businesses compete more effectively while staying true to their values and maintaining strong customer relationships. The success attracted attention from larger technology consulting firms who were curious about Compass Digital Partners' model and interested in potential acquisition. Marcus received several offers that would have provided immediate financial security and rapid growth opportunities. Each offer represented a return to the world of impressive revenues and prestigious industry recognition that he had recently abandoned. Marcus discussed these opportunities with his informal board of advisors, which had grown to include Carmen, David, Sarah, and 2 of their most insightful clients. The conversations were revealing in their unanimity. Everyone agreed that accepting acquisition would undermine the fundamental principles upon which the company had been built. The moment you start optimizing for someone else's definition of success, you lose sight of your own mission, Carmen observed during one of their monthly advisory sessions. Those companies want to buy you because you're different from them, but they'll change you to be more like them. Carmen had become an invaluable advisor, not because she understood the technical aspects of the business, but because she understood people and organizations in ways that formal business education rarely taught. Her insights about client relationships, employee motivation, and sustainable growth had helped Marcus avoid several decisions that would have compromised the company's values for short-term gains. The decision to remain independent and privately held became a defining moment for Compass Digital Partners, establishing a precedent for prioritizing long-term mission over short-term opportunities. Marcus realized that this decision would have been impossible to make during his Chen Digital Solutions days, when every choice was evaluated primarily through the lens of financial impact and competitive positioning. As the company's second year began, Marcus reflected on the complete transformation of his professional and personal life. He was earning significantly less money than during the peak years of Chen Digital Solutions, but he was experiencing a level of job satisfaction and personal fulfillment that he had never achieved during his previous pursuit of conventional success. The metrics that mattered to him had fundamentally changed. Instead of tracking quarterly revenue growth and profit margins, Marcus focused on client retention rates, employee satisfaction scores, and the measurable improvements that Compass Digital Partners created for their clients' businesses. The company maintained a client satisfaction rating above 95%, with most clients becoming long-term partners rather than one-time customers. More personally satisfying was the culture that had emerged within the company. Employees regularly collaborated across projects, sharing knowledge and supporting each other's professional development. There was no competition for resources or recognition because everyone understood that individual success was tied to collective success. The company offered professional development opportunities, flexible work arrangements, and profit sharing that ensured everyone benefited from the organization's growth. Marcus had also discovered that running a people-focused business created positive effects beyond the workplace. Several employees had started families during their time at Compass Digital Partners, and the company's supportive environment had made it possible for them to maintain successful careers while being present for their children. The flexible work arrangements and genuine concern for work-life balance had attracted talented professionals who might otherwise have left the technology industry due to its traditionally demanding culture. During the company's second anniversary celebration, held in the same Georgetown warehouse where they had started, Marcus stood before his team and reflected on the journey that had brought them together. Looking around the room at people who had become genuine friends as well as colleagues, he felt a sense of accomplishment that was deeper and more sustainable than anything he had experienced during his previous career. 2 years ago, I thought I had lost everything, Marcus said to the assembled group. I was measuring success by all the wrong metrics, focusing on impressive numbers instead of meaningful relationships. It took a conversation with someone who had been working in my house for 2 years, someone I had barely noticed, to help me understand what business success actually looks like. Marcus told the story of Carmen's insight about people-focused versus numbers-focused business, how that single conversation had catalyzed his complete reevaluation of professional priorities and personal values. He explained how her wisdom about treating business as a means of serving others rather than just generating wealth had become the foundation for everything Compass Digital Partners represented. Carmen reminded me that behind every number on a spreadsheet is a human being with hopes and fears and families to support, Marcus continued. When we remember that fundamental truth, we make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and create more sustainable success. The speech received enthusiastic applause, but Marcus noticed that several team members were wiping away tears. Later, Sarah Martinez approached him to say that his story had helped her understand why working at Compass Digital Partners felt so different from her previous employment experiences. It's rare to work for a leader who has genuinely learned from their mistakes and built something better because of those lessons, Sarah said. Most successful people just repeat the same patterns that brought them initial success, even when those patterns stop working. You actually changed, and you built a company that reflects those changes. As the evening wound down and employees began heading home to their families, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the crisis that had forced him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about business and success. The collapse of Chen Digital Solutions had been painful and humbling, but it had also been necessary for him to discover a more authentic and sustainable approach to professional achievement. Walking home to his Capitol Hill apartment, Marcus thought about the conversation with Carmen that had started this transformation. A woman he had barely noticed, someone whose wisdom he had initially dismissed because of assumptions about education and social status, had provided the insight that rebuilt his entire career on a foundation of genuine service and authentic relationships. The irony wasn't lost on him that his greatest business success had come not from pursuing success directly, but from focusing on serving others and building meaningful connections. Carmen's observation about people-focused businesses ultimately becoming more financially successful than numbers-focused businesses had proven prophetic. Compass Digital Partners was more profitable per employee than Chen Digital Solutions had ever been, while also creating better working conditions and delivering superior results for clients. Marcus reached his apartment and settled into his small home office, a simple space that contained none of the expensive equipment or status symbols that had filled his previous workspace. On his modest desk sat a handwritten note from Carmen, delivered earlier that week after one of their monthly advisory sessions. The note read, "Remember that success is not about reaching a destination, but about choosing the right direction and staying true to your values along the journey." As Marcus prepared for bed, he reflected on how completely his definition of success had evolved. 2 years earlier, he had measured achievement through external validation, competitive positioning, and impressive financial metrics. Now he measured success through the positive impact his company created for clients, the supportive environment it provided for employees, and the alignment between his daily actions and his deepest values. The transformation hadn't been easy or immediate. There had been moments of doubt, financial stress, and the challenge of rebuilding professional relationships after the very public failure of his previous company. But the foundation provided by Carmen's wisdom about people-focused business had proven strong enough to support not just a new company, but a completely new approach to professional and personal fulfillment. Marcus Chen had discovered that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or status symbols, but in the richness of relationships, the satisfaction of meaningful work, and the knowledge that his professional success was creating positive change in the lives of others. And it had all begun with a simple conversation about the difference between businesses that focus on people and businesses that focus only on numbers. The cleaning lady had indeed shared one sentence that changed everything, but more importantly, she had helped Marcus understand that the most valuable business insights often come from the most unexpected sources. In learning to truly see and listen to Carmen, Marcus had learned to see and listen to all the people whose lives intersected with his business, and that attention to human relationships had become the cornerstone of his most authentic and sustainable success. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.